I don't think Nvidia can get away with 12 gigabytes on the 5060. I think next year 12 gigabytes is going to already feel like 8. We've had 12 gigabyte mid-range cards for 6 years as of now. Next year will be 7. And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom, and the lead sponsors for today's episode are Cook Unity, where you can get 50% off your first order through the link below. Minis Forum and their N5 Max AI NAS system, where you can get it $30 off through the link below with offer code Broken Silicon, and of course, CDkeyoffer.com, where you can get Windows 11 Professional for $24. Dan, how are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Tom?
Good. Right before we started recording, you were telling me about one of the most ridiculous local ads you've seen in the Madison area of Wisconsin, where someone basically just says, what, it's a mini mall? It looks like a mini mall a million times.
A pawn shop is, I think it's a pawn shop, is just like a mini mall. I'm sure.
And he does a rap who's like, it's like a mini mall.
It's just like a mini mall. Yeah. And he just says that over and over again. And I'm curious. I'm sure there's some fans in Madison that have also seen this ad.
See, I
Tell
want
me
to know
the name of the store. I want to see the ad again because it's terrible. But
and I want Dan to see it again so he can send it to me. But no, that is why I brought it up, because I am genuinely curious if people in that area have seen this ad, and I'm kind of curious to see other people like in other parts of the country, or maybe even are there small town ads out, like outside of Verdun in France? Like, show me your ridiculous local ads as well, because I was just talking to you, like, I feel like the best sorts of weird ads are like in
middle market, mid-tier cities,
like cities like the size of Wichita or Peoria, Illinois, because they're big enough to make the ad and have the money, but they're not. A lot of them have no production value or make any sense. Like one you pointed out, I think you either want that or you want like a mega city like LA or New York, where yes, plenty of people have the money for a good ad, but there's so many people that live there. You basically just get 3 times the crazy ads to also see, depending on where you are.
Yeah, and who the hell knows? If it's in LA, maybe it's like directed by Wes Anderson or something crazy. I don't know.
like his nephew has a cupcake store, and he's like, "Screw it, yeah, I'll make you an ad."
yeah,
I'm sure that does happen. But yeah, I'm curious. I want to know Kansas. I mean, Alabama, Vermont, anywhere. I want to know your crazy local ads, especially if you can link to them, because honestly, I don't know why we haven't done this on the podcast.
Bad local ads are great.
This is an easy way for me to farm something that'll make me laugh and us make each other laugh. But all right, let's actually get to the show here. Let me put down a timestamp for the corrections, as we have one. Gintech writes in and says, "Hi, Tom. It's my understanding that Sony's hubris with the PS3 was that they made it intentionally hard to develop for. This is a quote, "We don't provide the easy to program for console that developers want, because easy to program for means that anybody will be able to take advantage of pretty much what the hardware can do." So then the question would become, well, what do you do for the rest of the 9.5 years? This is Kaz Rai, CEO of Sony Computer Entertainment. Though I've seen people speculate this was to make porting to other systems more difficult, since Sony assumed that like the PS2 and 3 would be the default platform games are developed for. Yeah, man, I think you're thinking about this too hard. This is just damage control. They were designing their own like GPU add-on to the Cell. It didn't work out. They needed an Nvidia GPU. The Cell, what it was designed for, really didn't end up being something that was really able to live up to in the way it was supposed to. And they ended up with a hard to program for console that was kind of a Frankenstein device. But like, because what's the alternative? What are they going to say? Like, yeah, we screwed up. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's funny. That quote is almost just a rephrasing of the fine wine argument, isn't it? Where it's like,
with AMD.
Well, why would we want something to work well when it starts? Because then there's no room to go off. And it's like, well, I don't know. I think if you could have delivered The Last of Us 1 level graphics in 2007, I think you would have, but I don't know. Call me crazy.
Or like with the AMD fine wine thing, it's like, well, our stuff gets better over time. It's like, yeah, but I bet you would have sold more 7970s if at launch it was as fast as the GTX 780 that wasn't even out yet. Like, these arguments are ridiculous. No, it's damage control. AMD used to, not really anymore, used to launch their graphics cards as quickly as possible because they were the underdog against Nvidia, and they wanted to get their card out a month or two before them. I mean, famously, the 7970 that I just mentioned, I believe it launched like late December in 2011, just so they could have it out a quarter or two before Kepler. And ultimately, was that really the right decision? Wouldn't it have been better if it just launched in January, February, and beat the 680 firmly out of the gate? I mean, that's what they do now with RDNA 4. Just launch it is great.
Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like we have enough evidence, or not really evidence, well-documented facts about the fact that there is a lot of failures at the design level of the PS3 that, like, I think we can say it was probably hard to design for because there were some issues with the design ideas behind it, not because they were doing a 3D chess move necessarily.
No. And I mean, like, what else is said here about like making it hard to port to other no, and there's ways where they can make it hard to port. Like, I believe a DRM mechanism in PS4 games is if the GPU isn't running at 800 or 853 megahertz, the game doesn't work. Like, so there's ways they can make it hard, very hard to port something that don't require some esoteric architecture.
Yeah.
All right. Let us now move on then to the first story. Story number 1. Nvidia RTX 50 Super re-leaked. Still no evidence of the RTX 60 series coming anytime soon. Here's the write-up. It is shaping out to be another summer of leaks for Moore's Law is Dead, as this episode is really half of just our own information. Genuinely, like, thank God this is one of those cycles where I'm glad I put out leaks in addition to opinion pieces, because I don't really know what we would talk about in the news if it wasn't for that. But anyways, we kick off this with a bit of deja vu. RTX Blackwell Super. It turns out that compared to what we saw last year, yes, a year ago is when I originally leaked Super information, and other leakers did too, very little has changed. If you look at the lineup, the 5080 Super is still 10,752 CUDA cores, 24 gigabytes of 32 gigabit per second memory, 415 watts for the TDP. So it's like what is that? Like a 15% kind of per wattage increase from the base non-super. 5070 Ti Super, 8960 CUDA cores, 24 gigabytes of 28 gigabit per second, 350 watts. That one there is like a 17% increase in power consumption. And then the 5070 Super is 6400 CUDA cores, 18 gigabytes, and 275 watts. All three of those, I expect a roughly 10% performance increase. For those that are worried that there'd be a minuscule increase in performance like the 4080 Super, remember the 4080 Super didn't have a TDP increase, and I think that held it back. Obviously, when you look at the wildly higher power consumption, that's just what they're going with this time around. And then finally, let me throw on top of there, the 5060 may be Super. So they're not sure if they'll call it the Super. There's a chance they might just launch a 5060 12 gigabyte that they just happen to sell next to an 8 gigabyte one, despite it being notably better. But that begs the question then, so if nothing's really changed, does it still make sense to launch a Super series 1 year later with the same specs that have just been sitting in a back room somewhere? Yeah, it kind of does. I mean, first of all, GDDR7 seems to not be hit as badly in price increases lately as other memory types like LPDDR5X. And second, NVIDIA really is going to try to milk the end of the AI bubble as hard as possible. And they likely, therefore, plan to use their leading edge nodes like 3 nanometer and 2 nanometer exclusively for AI products. In fact, even inference or smaller AI is now not going to use gaming chips like GB202, but they're starting to use dedicated AI optimized silicon like Rubin CPX, or possibly even more different LPX solutions. So extending gaming Blackwell for years to come will allow them to continue to use the 4 nanometer node for their gamer GPUs, and therefore they might wait until they can possibly use Intel's fabs to manufacture a gaming lineup in line with the iGPU chiplets they'll be making for Intel in 2028 or 2029. Anyway, so until then, NVIDIA will have to hope that pushing the 5080 to 415 watts can compete with RDNA 5. And on the note, I'll add this too, it wasn't in the write-up, but specifically in the leak, I had a couple sources ask about RTX 60 series in radio silence, like nothing's on the horizon right now. So could be wrong, maybe it'll come out late next year, but as of now, you know, I mean, just being honest, launching the Super Series, I'd be surprised if they launched something within a year of that.
I mean, to me, it makes a lot. Honestly, in this environment that we have, like, just extending the life of Blackwell even for another year kind of makes a lot of sense. I really don't feel like there's that much of a yearning for substantially more powerful GPUs in the market right now, especially with the RAM crisis. And like even when you see like discussion online of GPUs and like people being frustrated with what's considered low end now, like you even see some frustration of like people getting mad about like a 3060 having some issues running games at some points, and like that's a 5 or 6 year old GPU at this point. So like I don't know, extending the lifespan of Blackwell by another year by just giving a relatively nominal increase in performance, and I would say for the most part across the lineup just correcting the amount of RAM that they have, with I don't know, I guess maybe the exception of the 5070 Ti, which I think 16 is basically fine for that. Mm-hmm. For the most part makes sense. Maybe the least dumb super series I can think of since the super moniker has been launched, although I do feel like in a lot of ways it's still correcting for the sins of the initial launch of Nvidia with their inability to release a graphics card with an adequate amount of RAM. And then they just come back to 1 to 3 years later now, I guess, and are like, well, here it is with the correct amount of RAM.
Yeah, I gotta say again, I just think 5070 Ti Super sounds so stupid. Like I don't get why.
Yeah.
I don't get why they can't just do a launch and be honest. Like if you're gonna call the 5080 the 5080, some would say you should call it the 5070. But all right, call that the 5080. Call the 5070 Ti the 5070. Call what the 5070 is the 5060. Just sell it for $500 and be like, suck it, nerds. You know, like our 60 class is now $500 or $600, and if you complain, well, we would just say, look how powerful 60 is. It's as powerful as AMD 70. Like from a marketing perspective, I don't see why not. And then just the 5060 is 128-bit. It should be the 5050. It's $300. It's ridiculous.
Well, and I do wonder, like,
and then you can just add Super or Ti to these without needing a Ti Super. Is what I was going to say.
Well, yeah. I've always had, you and I have always had our difficulties with these super monikers, especially as it just makes the TI versions seem a little
redundant. Like, why do we have TI anymore if we're going to use
TI Super? And it makes it a little difficult, like offhand, I feel, to understand exactly where the lineups should be with each other. Like, I don't know if you're somebody that's newer to PC hardware and you see like a 5070 Ti and a 5070 Super, in your brain, which one of those sounds like the more premium thing? Like the Super almost sounds like it should be more powerful to me just offhand, but I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. And I do almost feel like we're in a world where people always seem to love retro, and people are yearning for the days of the early 2010s. Part of me wonders if like bringing back the SE moniker might work, like having a 5080 SE. I know they never used the SE for that, but
you don't.
That
you
might
use
be
SE for 60 or lower, because otherwise it's not premium.
Yeah, and God forbid we ever release a product that doesn't sound like the name is premium ever again, Tom. To quote to cite that Tim and Eric sketch that we keep citing, we've got the best prices, we've got premium prices. It really does just feel like that's what the PC space is turning into a lot of the time, is everything needs to pretend to be premium. And I don't know, we've been complaining about that for like 4 years now, though.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how much more there is to say about this. I mean, I guess I'll say one thing. I open up the video where I had this leak last week, where I'm talking about how I see a lot of the discussion online, and no offense, but well, I like to pride Moore's Law is dead, and I think we don't try to have the hottest take. We try to have the take that critiques the hottest take, or we look at people's gut reactions and we go, here's what you're missing. And the gut reaction to rumors popping up from other leakers, I believe on Twitter recently too, about the Super Series still being on for next year, was like, oh my God, if they're going to add RAM, how expensive are these cards going to be? And I'm like, guys, they're adding 8 gigabytes. They're not adding 32. like a Strix Halo system where you decide between 32 and 64 during a memory crunch that could genuinely add like $500 to the cost to make the laptop. You're adding 8 gigabytes. At most, you're adding $160. But that's actually assuming there was zero RAM cost before. So in reality, you're probably adding like $100 to the cost. And these graphics cards, at least, 70 Ti and up, are like over $1,000. So the concern is not the cost of the RAM, guys. You're not going to go, oh man, do I spend $1,000 or $1,100? Do I want the one that's 10% faster and has 50% more RAM for 10% more cost? That's not the concern. The whole reason these GPUs are expensive right now is not RAM. AMD's prices are going down. They're getting cheaper despite taking market share. So the concern is, are you making them? AMD is making RDNA 4. Their prices are reasonable. Nvidia is not making Blackwell GPUs for gamers. Their prices are inflated. That's it. It's not the RAM cost. GPUs do not use 32 gigs of RAM unless it's the 5090, which then, that's going to be $4,000. But again, mostly because they're just not making it.
Yeah, but I mean, with 5080 Super, I mean, using the same die, same core count, and clocked a bit higher, like what? So it has 8 gigabytes more RAM, and it's selling for what? About $1,400 to $1,500 these days. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they can release it for $1,800 or something and still make a pretty penny more in profit off of it anyways.
Yeah. So again, what it really all comes down to, because I'm sure more rumors about these will come out. I'm sure pictures of them will emerge in a few months and we'll do a video on it and it'll be a story and everyone will be like, oh, there it is. It's coming. Oh boy. Like when these are about to be officially announced and then when they are announced, whatever you see them announced for price, don't go, these dang RAM prices. Go, oh, that tells us if they're going to make a lot of them or not. If they announce an MSRP that's the same, like I was told a year ago, their MSRPs are going to be similar to what the launch cards were, just like kind of they did with the 40 Super Series. If they do that, that tells you the bubble's popping. They actually might have MSRP, and it's going to be because they're actually making them. If they announce like $1,500 for the 5080 Super, $900, I guess is what they'd have to go with, even though that sounds like that'll be a fake price for the 5070 Ti Super. And, the 5070 Super is like, what would that probably end up being? Like $750. That tells you what they're doing is they're adding $40 to $100 to the total cost so that they can raise prices a ton because they still don't plan to make a lot of these cards.
Yeah.
Techno writes in, could Nvidia quadruple source the next generation of GPUs to keep up with demand like they did with Pascal, but of course more extreme? Well, it depends what you mean by GPU, because at this point Nvidia makes so many different things. Like they're still, I don't know, are they still producing Hopper? They might be. Like they're still producing all of these different, they must be actually, like AI GPUs.
I mean, they would have to be
RTX Spark,
just keep up with contracts,
Nintendo
right?
Switches. So already they're making things at Samsung, TSMC. Not Intel yet, but like,
will they be? Will next gen be at Intel at all? I don't remember.
I have a theory that the 60 series might be.
Okay.
Remember, because they're waiting for the GPU chiplets.
Right.
Yeah. Then that would mean they can design one gaming generation that is for both Intel APUs and for dedicated.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think what you're going to see next gen is something will be made at Intel. I don't know if, again, it's still just a theory that they would make their gaming cards there. But I think at a minimum, they'll make their iGPU chiplets there probably. And then they'll probably have the most cutting edge AI chips on A14 or 2 nanometer and 3 nanometer. And then, I could see their gaming lineup being sourced from a whole bunch of places like they did with Pascal, where they went to Samsung and TSMC. Although, again, when it comes to Samsung, what I hear from people at Nvidia is they hate Samsung. They're like, Ampere was a shit show. I mean, it sucked having to deal with the yields there. So they feel very burned from Samsung. Never get in the way of a good deal, but I do continue to wonder if they'll bother with Samsung. It seems more like AMD would give them a chance because they haven't been burned recently. Yeah,
we'll see. I mean, yeah, Ampere was a hard series to keep track of because of Samsung, I suppose. So
Deadeyes117 writes in and says, hi, Tom, all. I think Nvidia pretty much has to put more VRAM on their next generation cards, but what do you think we will actually get? My guess is same bus sizes across the lineup as we currently have, but with 3 gigabyte modules. So 12 for 60, 8 for 70, 18 for 70, 24 for 80. Do you agree, or do you think they might do something different? That strategy could end up looking really embarrassing, honestly, if PS6 comes out with the originally planned 40 gigabytes. If they do it like I described, do you think 18 gigabyte cards will have any advantage over 16, or will it be effectively identical in most cases? So that's only 12.5% more VRAM. Well, I mean, that's the difference between 9 or 8. I think on the margins that will help if you're running out of RAM. Like, for example, it would not surprise me if the 59 gigabyte genuinely has notably less issues than the 8 gigabyte model, because when you're a dev and you're programming to just barely fit in 8, that extra little buffer probably will smooth out the frame times actually quite a bit, quite disproportionately.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to and then the same for like 10 versus 12 gigabyte cards on that one. When it comes to 18 versus 16, I have to imagine for the most part it won't make a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
maybe could, for the same argument, 9 versus 8, but that's when
I guess
really
you could make a similar argument about 9 versus 8, but I doubt in 2 to 3 years from now that will be a huge difference. Maybe if you're one of those like future proofing people that are like, I'm going to run this 80 GPU for the next 6 years, it will benefit you a lot, but I doubt many people getting 80 GPUs are running them for 6 years, honestly. So maybe if you're one of those people, it'll benefit you a little bit. But like, I think where you'll see the biggest benefits would be like the 12 having, or the 60 class having 12 gigabytes of VRAM, and maybe the 80 having 24. Like I really do think where they really need to increase the amount of RAM they give is at the lower end, where 12 gigabytes in, what will that be, like 2027, 2028? I think that will even feel a little bit limited. So I think that those 12 gigabyte 60 class GPUs still could even look a little bit goofy, but it's better than if they try to roll the dice with 8 again, I guess. Yeah,
so another thing too, like this question about how much VRAM they'll actually select, a lot of this has to do with AMD. I guess I'll actually give this teaser. I might have an AMD next generation GPU update later this week, everybody. And if I do, a big part of it is that something that we kind of been dancing around basically already saying anyways, which is that it seems like RDNA 5 is going to launch before the 60 series, right? Even if there is a 60 series next year, it seems like Nvidia is likely to drag their feet far more, because AMD is going to literally be using the same dedicated GPU chiplets in Helix and literally launching RDNA 5 and PS6 next year, and their APUs first half of next year. Remember, their APUs, or maybe second half of next year, are the chiplet ones. But remember, those APUs literally also use the same chiplets as like the 9060 XT successor. So AMD basically has to launch, or can if they want to, for sure. Like, they'll just be sitting there, launch them next year. So from that perspective, AMD might actually beat Nvidia to market with the next generation lineup. And depending on how AMD customizes their cards, I think that will tell you what Nvidia decides to do, because it's all going to come down to if the AI bubble has popped by the time these things launch. Because and we just put out of course, I just recorded with Ed Zitron. I recommend that if you want to hear why it might pop soon. We just recorded a die shrink that patrons get access to. Join us there, and you'll get over an hour where we discuss what will cause the AI bubble to pop and why me and you think it will happen within a year. There should also be a cut down yield out about it before this comes out as well. So there's plenty of ways for you to see our opinion on why the AI bubble will pop that we don't need to get to again right now. But if it does, remember that the initial documents I had for RDNA 5, their flagship was actually a cut down from 512-bit to 384-bit was seemingly their initial plan, and that was going to have 36 gigabytes of RAM. So, right, if they launch a 36 gigabyte flagship that's like 30%, 40, 50% faster than a 5090, let's just say that's what it accomplishes, I don't think NVIDIA can just screw around with 32 gigabytes. That's going to look silly. And even their mid-range cards had 18 gigabytes. Yeah, like even AI variants of like the low end having like 48 gigabytes here. So I that's the thing. Like, if the AI bubble pops, if they can launch their LPDDR5X low-end GPUs. But remember, everybody, LPDDR5X ones that have up to a 256-bit bus, I mean, there's nothing stopping AMD from launching 24, 32 gigabyte low-end cards. And so we'll have to see, like, where does the price of RAM go? Does AMD have the allocation, and are they ready to push an advantage here? Because if they were, they could launch 36 gigabyte high-end, 36 gigabyte mid-range, 32 gigabyte low-end cards. And in a world where they do that, I don't think NVIDIA can get away with 12 gigabytes on the 5060. I mean, call me naive, but I think next year 12 gigabytes is going to already feel like 8. I'm sorry. Like, we've had 12 gigabyte mid-range cards from 2020. We've had 12 gigabyte mid-range cards for 6 years as of now. Next year will be 7. I mean,
yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like, I do think the Nvidia premium over AMD, that gap is definitely starting to close a little bit. So if they tried to do that a year or two from now, it could present some issues, I suppose. But I mean, AMD and Nvidia has, and Nvidia, like compared to AMD, has very often launched anemic RAM capacities versus AMD's lineup. Now, I think it's pretty rarely been straight up like half to a third, I suppose, but it has happened before, and you've seen it on
800 3070 Ti.
and you've seen like people on forums say like advocate, like I remember when I first got into PC gaming, like, yeah, the 1 gigabyte of RAM will never be an issue. Don't worry about that. So, well, we'll see. Like, I do think that premium is starting to shrink, or that perceived premium is starting to shrink that Nvidia has over AMD, but it is still there to an extent. So I could see it working out if they're able to launch half even at some of those tiers.
Yeah. So,
or half the RAM
look,
at some of those tiers, I should say.
We'll see. But if I was AMD, what I would be doing is thinking minimum 18 gigabytes for the mid-range. And I might even try to go for 24 gigabytes. And then minimum like 32, 36 high end. And then at least 16 for their low end cards. But again, if they could get to like, if you could make the lineup 36, 24, 24, 24, 16, that's a really compelling lineup. And I don't know. I don't think the 5060 can get away. I think more likely what you would see next gen is the 90 class, sure, have 48 gigabytes, the 80 class of 24 or 32. And yes, maybe 18 gigabytes for the 70, but I think the 60 is going to get 16. Mm-hmm. I just don't think 12 is going to last long enough. Yeah. I don't think it will. No. We'll see though. Could be wrong. It'd be funny. It'd be funny if they did 8 and AMD had 24. That's what I want to see.
I think if that happened, that would definitely get brought up in reviews a lot. 12 gigabytes, I think it would get criticized a lot, but maybe you would have some people still be fine with it. And 16 versus 24, I think a lot of people would call it more or less a wash. But
yeah, 16 versus 24, it'd be like the 4080 versus 7900 XTX where they pretend it doesn't matter unless you have a 4090 for some reason. But yeah, anything less than that, and it would definitely matter. I will say too, I kind of have to say this as well. Remember that right now LPDDR5X prices are so high, they're like barely less than GDDR7, and AMD's low-end GPUs next year use LPDDR5X. So we'll have to see what happens to that, because me and you were talking about this offline, Dan. There's a good chance AMD launches like their Halo APUs mid to late next year at around the same time they launch high-end and mid-range RDNA 5, and then they just kind of have to wait to launch the low-end GPUs until LPDDR5X prices come out. So it might be a wonky, weird world where like AMD launches high-end, no low-end, NVIDIA launches crappy low-end cards. AMD has to wait for those prices to come down before they can bother. We'll see. There's a lot of different ways this could go. All right. Speaking of different ways something can go, let's talk about a way something went that I didn't manage to talk about in the last week I put out. It kind of worked, Dan, okay? This piece of content is brought to you by Cook Unity. Look, there's many chef-to-consumer meals delivery services out there right now, but I have to say that when it comes to selection, Cook Unity really stands out with a huge quality of selection. And I want to be clear, I emphasize the word quality because the total number of options is not like it's low, but there's a ton of options and they are all high quality. You see, they have 300 plus meals nationwide from over 160 chefs that support over 10 dietary preferences. And therefore, for me, for example, it's hard to actually choose between so many of them because almost all of the meals are ones that I would actually want and they look delicious. But eventually I settled on having a few meals that we would bundle together for like a fun night with my girlfriend. I had an Asian night planned and a Mexican night one. And what you're seeing on screen is the Mexican night, where I have Barbacoa Beef Burrito Bowl by Miguel Zamudio, a Beef Tinga Tacos by Akhtar Nawab, and Chipotle Barbecue Chicken Quesadillas by Ruben Garcia. And And yes, they really were all delicious as usual for Cook Unity. And they genuinely were very quick to make, not quite as quick as like an instant burrito or TV dinner, but dangerously close to that easy, meaning you get far better than usual instant meal quality without a lot of the effort that's actually required with their competition. You don't have to sit there and cook. It's almost as easy as popping it in the oven or microwave. It tastes far better than it should for how easy it is. So if you are interested, go to the link in the description now to try Cook Unity and get 50% off your first order of chef-made meals delivered fresh to your door. That's right, Cook Unity is offering my viewers 50% off their first order. Click the link in the description below and use my code MOORE50, that's MOORE 50, to support Moore's Law is Dead and try out their fantastic meals today. Story number 2, AMD RX 9080 XT update. So this section was actually just straight up cut from the 50 Super video that I put out. Like, I was going to address what's going on with what would be the competition potentially to the 50 Super series, the RX 9080 XT. That leak I put out, that in the labs, multiple people talked about this to me. There is some above 3.4 gigahertz 32 gigabyte sample that has GDDR7. Idea being maybe they literally just do a different stepping or maybe even a slight die shrink of Navi 48, which is in the 9070 XT, something that we've already seen. Like, mine can clock to 3.4 gigahertz, by the way. Like, just put that on, like, go from N4 to N4X, or even just a stepping with higher voltage tweaks. You could probably get that thing clocked over 10% above stock, what a 9070 XT has, and then give it just a GDDR7 IP, block. Instead of GDDR6, I mean, you can increase bandwidth by 40%. I mean, if you just, boom, 30% faster card with very little design work. I was going to address that in my 50 Super leak, but ultimately the flow just didn't work. Like, as I was recording, it was flowing well. Like, I was getting from point to point, changing the topics where, like, the connective tissue between the different subjects was such that it was like, if I throw this in there, it's like I've just halted a train. And now I'm talking about this. And so I thought I'd just read what I had in the script now, because I do have an update for the 9080 XT. So here's what would have been in some section of that video. So the street pricing on 50 series is so overpriced already, to the point that the real question is, will Nvidia actually make any of these? It's not what about the cost of an extra measly 8 gigabytes of RAM when your GPU already costs $1,500, which, on that note, RDNA 4 continues to be priced at half the cost of Nvidia's anti-consumer lineup. Genuinely, nobody should be considering a $1,000 5070 Ti when the 9070 XT, which is frankly aging into being the faster card than the Nvidia counterpart, is 30% cheaper. And by the way, I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. I've been directly told by my sources that GDDR6 prices continue to drop, and this is going to give AMD a massive pricing advantage for the foreseeable future that I think will remain, even if Nvidia increased production of Blackwell, until something fundamental changes with the market. Additionally, because GDDR6 is an advantage now for AMD, I also think we can probably say goodbye to the idea of a 9080 XT. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some GDDR7, maybe the GDDR7 capacity getting freed up a little bit will finally allow AMD to launch some 24 or even 32 gigabyte $1,000 5080 super competitor. But I personally think it would make far more sense for AMD to make a 9075 XT 32 gigabyte that uses GDDR6, something just 10% faster but has RAM that can be cost reasonably, than it would ever make sense right now to launch new silicon that requires GDDR7 that Nvidia has been struggling with the whole generation. We've already seen many 9070 XT samples reliably hit 3.4 gigahertz anyways. I find it hard to believe that they couldn't systematically bend some of these to be 3.3 gigahertz or higher at stock, give them a 360 watt TDP like the 5080, which would be 20% more power than now, and include 32 gigabytes of RAM. Such a product would likely trade blows with the 5080 anyways and beat it below 4K and offer 5090 RAM capacity at a price Nvidia literally could not match. At least that's what I would do, but hopefully they do both. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that reasoning, Dan?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I am curious how much the general gaming public would care about the increase to 32 gigabytes at that level of performance. I mean, I guess if they can get something out to compete it would be in a weird spot where it's kind of both competing with the 5080 and 5080 Super, I suppose. And if it could do that, like, well, we have the same amount or more RAM than the 5080 Super. It's slightly weaker, but it's also like, I don't know, half the price. I think that's what it would end up looking like if Nvidia goes for more.
Well, at least a couple $100
milking pricing,
double the RAM, you know,
yeah,
or like, because I could like. If right now the 9070 XT is selling for, let's just say, it's often less, but let's say it's $700, like adding another 16 gigabytes of GDDR6, I think, might just add another $100.
Yeah, if they sold that for like $900 in the 5080 Super,
or even $800, price match the 5070 Ti.
And the 5080 Super ended up selling for like, I don't know, I guess the MSRP
anything above 1,000, honestly.
Yeah, and I guess the MSRP probably wouldn't try to do anything more than $1,200, but like if that effectively becomes selling for like $1,500 or $1,600 most of the time, I think that could be pretty convincing. And I think positioning that as a both 5070 Ti Super and 5080 Super competitor based on how you cut it, could work out really well. Versus, I guess the advantage maybe of having a GDDR7 would be you could get slightly more performance, and I guess they would be sourcing their RAM from more locations.
I think you could get to where people have wanted a card to be. Like at the end of the day, people love the 4090. That level of performance is where it just feels like you're laughing off every game. And if they launch something that was 30% faster than a 9070 XT, it would be in the 4090 realm. And it would have 24 gigabytes. There you go. There's your $1,000 4090 that everyone has been, or maybe $900, $800 4090 that everyone has been hoping for, right? Mm-hmm. Like that would be the argument for doing it if they could supply a decent amount of them. You have to wonder if it matters. You know what I mean? There was an RX 490, by the way, for Polaris. They had a 384-bit design. They just didn't see it as really being what would take market share. And because they knew it wouldn't take the performance crown, they're like, that's really the point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I wonder if they think the same thing here.
Yeah, or maybe like even the idea of a 9080 XT, like I don't know, maybe doing like some limited edition release of 9070 XT, or I looked it up. We're in the year of the Fire Horse, the 9070 Fire Horse edition. I don't know. Could work out.
The year of the Fire Horse.
I guess we're in the year of the Fire Horse. Although maybe you don't want to associate graphics cards with fires in this market.
Not Nvidia lately. Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, what I really hope is they do both. I mean, if I'm thinking here, I'm like, let's bin 9070 XTs and have a 9075 XT that's like $100 more with the same amount of RAM, $150, $200 more with 32 gigabytes of RAM, just as kind of like a potato masher into Nvidia's lineup of like people would be looking like, I just saw like on Newegg, I'm looking at the best sellers. AMD is dominating GPU sales right now. Do it yourself. The 5090, I think those sold out at $4,200. You can't tell me that if AMD launched some card that was like 2/3 the performance of a 5090 for a fifth the price with the same amount of RAM, that wouldn't sell like hotcakes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But then, hopefully above that, there's another 32 gigabyte card that's even 30% faster. That'd be great. I wonder what the point is, especially because I'm going to hint at this again. Again, I might have a video about this later this week. If RDNA 5 comes a little bit sooner than people are expecting, what is really the point in launching this now if you're going to have better stuff, in like 12 months from now or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like if they want to release it to meet the Super, and that still has 6 months on the market, like 6 to 8 months on the market as the strongest GPU, I could see it. But
it'd be literally a Radeon 7 situation, I suppose, where it launched the same year RDNA 1 did. It had just a ton of RAM, though, and was an alternative to the 2080. Not the 2080 Ti, but the 2080. And a lot of people got it like me because I'm like, well, I mean, only in a few games does it get close to a 2080 Ti, but it does have like 50% more RAM than a 2080 Ti. So Techno writes in, if AMD is likely to beat Nvidia in gaming performance in next generation in both ray tracing and raster, and AI seems like it's dying at the moment, will Nvidia return to its roots and try to beat AMD in efficiency? I highly doubt it, and I actually think this is a misconception. Nvidia's roots were never efficiency. It was a fluke they were ever more efficient than AMD. I'm sorry, guys. Like, what? Like, I need to 5,000 series from AMD, more efficient than Fermi. 6,000, way more efficient than Fermi. 7,000, equal efficiency. Like Kepler kind of seemed more efficient at first, but it aged very badly. It really wasn't more efficient. It's pretty much same ballpark. And then
had a few generations of higher efficiency, I suppose, after that, right?
Yeah, I mean, Maxwell was more efficient because it was, well, no, it was even. I mean, really, the Fury was just as efficient. The Rebrandions weren't, but those were Rebrandions. Like, so, no, they had efficient cards. And then you had, after that, what? Like, Polaris was less efficient than Pascal, but it used a worse node. It wasn't, like, crazy less efficient. Like, Ampere, less efficient. Turing, same, really. I mean, more efficient than AMD's older cards when RDNA 1 came out. Same. RDNA 3, less efficient. RDNA 4, same. There isn't a track record here of Nvidia being more efficient than AMD. That's actually only if you if you just got into PC gaming, you look at the 575 watt Blackwell and laugh. Like, there's no clear like it's just depends on the generation.
Yeah, they go back and forth, and it's not. I mean, it's never been really different like leagues of efficiency. Like, rarely, I remember generations where it would be like what 180 versus like 250 sometimes, but like a lot of the time it was like 180 versus like 220, or in practice like 200 watts. And I don't know, when you have those differences in efficiency, I really don't think it's generally worth considering that much. Like, obviously as a tiebreaker, like,
sure,
like if you're completely out of tiebreakers, I guess that difference in efficiency is worth going for.
It's a nice to have for sure. I mean, yeah, I'd say Lovelace, they had a clear efficiency advantage there. All right, so Lovelace and Pascal, but that's pretty much shit where it's even Ampere, where Nvidia was worse. 3070 was pretty efficient. You know, again, even when Maxwell wowed people, Fiji was just as efficient. It's not, it's not like something. So, and I think if there's one trend we're seeing right now that seems obvious, it's more for more. People keep turning up power consumption. So, especially Nvidia. So, if you tell me next gen, what do you think is more likely? AMD has a 350 watt flagship and Nvidia has a 250, or if Nvidia has a 600 watt and AMD has a 400, I'm gonna go with the latter there. I think it's more likely Nvidia is launching some 600 watt card than it is, and that AMD continues to try to make reasonably sized ones. Than it is that, oh yeah, all of a sudden Nvidia has gone with a 256-bit bus for their flagship again, and they're 250 watts. That's not the direction they're going in. All right, let us now move on to story number 3. Zen 6 confirmed to clock above 6.5 gigahertz. First benchmarks are also officially released by AMD for Zen 6, and they destroy the competition. All right, so now let's conclude the MOID leak section of this podcast with our old friend Zen 6. Following the CCD Powderhorn, what its code name is, reaching B0 stepping in recently, we have gotten yet even more information on what the core is capable of and what the lineup is going to look like. But there has been some bad news. That B0 stepping that we said is in the labs right now, and by the way, it is. I can double confirm that. It may not be as close to launch as we had estimated, because it does seem to be running into a issue that they're trying to fix right now. Now, we can't say for sure if there is a delay, but just keep that in mind when you're thinking about will Zen 6 launch later this year or early next year. It has actually just run into a road bump.
Yeah.
Road bump? Bump in the road. Road bump.
Sure. Road bump means the same thing as bump in the road.
But anyways, let's get into the meat of the leak. First of all, AMD is finally throwing their weight around with a wider array of targeted designs. Powderhorn itself will go into the Olympic Ridge desktop products, and there will actually be 2 versions of the main 12-core chiplet. One that is designed for insane clocks for desktop, and one that is designed to be added to laptop APUs for greater efficiency and increased multi-threading. Now, the focus seems to have paid off, though, on them trying to get to higher clocks with Zen 6. Though many doubted, rumors from Moore's Law is dead, I can now confirm that AMD's, my contacts at AMD are 100% sure that at least 6.5 gigahertz will be achieved for single core boost clocks with the flagship, and they are confident they'll be able to get to at least 6.6 gigahertz or higher, likely getting very close or getting to their 7 gigahertz target. On laptops, Mendocino will finally get a successor with the 2 plus 2 plus 2, 6 cores in total Bumblebee APU with just 2 to 4 CUs, so not that exciting. Medusa Point is also going to have 4 classic cores, 4 dense cores, and 2 low power cores, 10 total, with 8 compute units of RDNA 4M and an optional powder horn tile to go from 10 cores to 22 should you want that multi-threading. Oh, and while the 8 compute units sound smaller, and it is, it's half the compute units the Strix Point iGPU has right now. Keep in mind that Strix is heavily bandwidth limited, and so we feel that a substantially better architecture, like we've seen RDNA 4 can make do with far less bandwidth than its competition, that this could in many scenarios just make this a better gaming APU anyways for a lot of the designs that don't have the absolute fastest RAM on the market. But really that doesn't matter, because in reality, Medusa Point is really more of the Kraken successor, where you can add a 12-core chiplet if you want it to be like a high-end CPU. The true mid-range gaming APU is going to be something called Medusa Halo Mini. Also, some people have been calling it Medusa Premium. This drops into the same socket as Medusa Point, and although it cannot add an additional CPU chiplet, it comes with 14 cores right out of the gate, and it also comes with 24 compute units of RDNA 5. And then there's Medusa Halo, which can go up to like 26 cores and 48 compute units of RDNA 5. That one should be an absolute beast. And as time goes on, more and more of our information seems to be getting confirmed. Like we said in the title of this story, AMD has released official Zen 6 benchmarks that back up our early performance estimates. Now, what doesn't seem impressive at first, they have a Venice 256 core shown with a benchmark beating the outgoing Turin 192 core by like 39%. You'd say, well, 33% more cores, why only 39% more performance? Keep in mind that at this point, these C cores are consuming only 2 watts per core, despite having a 500 watt TDP. Compare that to a 24 core Zen 6 Ryzen, which will have speed optimized CCDs. They'll get 7 to 8 watts per core. So they'll be able to stretch their legs far more. And if you account for the fact that AMD also released some footnotes that said, were the Zen 6 Venice CPU to be allowed to boost above 500 watts, it beat Turin by 70% in performance.
What was Turin's GDP? Not GDP. TDP?
Same. It's like 500 versus 500. Okay. And if they allowed it to go to 600 watts or something, despite only having 33% more cores, they perform 70% better, suggesting, right, that these cores are at least 20%, 30% faster per core. And even then, I'm sure they were constrained by, like, it's 256 cores.
I guess the counterpoint though to that, it is an interesting thing I think you see with like computing a lot right now. Like, yeah, they're expanding the number of cores, but if you kind of look at it from what a watt per watt basis, there still is, I think, like a bit of a slowdown in efficiency increases, at least with the comparing Venice to Turin, correct? Or because I don't know, that's what concerns, or at least seeing like that server side thing, like not limiting it. Yeah, you're just getting, I guess, more power usage per core, right?
Well, yeah, but I think no matter how you dice it, 500 watt versus 500 watt, almost 40% faster.
Yeah,
that's a 40% increase in efficiency.
Yeah, never mind. Yeah.
So, and actually, my understanding is Zen 6 efficiency increase is wildly higher than Zen 5s and better than Zen 4s.
Okay.
I mean, I've seen actual benchmarks, and this is true for Zen 7 as well, where they're like, actually, the higher you go, the less it is more efficient, and like some of the Zen 7 versus Zen 6 ones specifically, just because those are fresh on my mind. I know it's not Zen 6, but still, like once you got down to like 2 watts, they were like 40% more efficient. So I think that's what this suggests too, is this is probably peak efficiency increase because these poor CPUs are only pulling 1 or 2 watts per core. But anyways here, let's see. Let me see what else is left in the write-up here. Let's see here. And this is based on server tests. Client workloads, especially gaming, are much more impacted by memory latency, which should improve significantly with Zen 6 and their new packaging setup. And then, well, there's the Vcache as well. In short, while Nova Lake is looking good, there's now zero doubt that it will have a hell of a fight trying to beat AMD's upcoming processor lineup. So let me say that again, everybody. Confirmed 24 cores for desktop. Confirmed above 6.5 gigahertz. Confirmed hundreds of megabytes of cache.
I mean, yeah, what you're seeing, What across the board increases in all of the things that I feel like have been the advantage AMD has been leveraging for the past 10 years or almost 10 years now, right? Yeah. And I don't know. Yeah, I think we're finally past the age of 16 core stagnation that we've been struggling with for since Zen 2. So
yes,
thank
the
you,
16
AMD, finally.
core. Let me see here. Amazon CPU bestseller. The 16 core stagnation, where the top selling 8 core, second best selling 6 core, third 6 core, fourth 8 core, fifth 8 core, sixth 16, seventh 16th, 8, 6, 9, 6, 10, 8 cores again. Where's Intel? 14th place is where people go, I need 24 cores with the 270K plus. By the way, only if it's $310. For those keeping track, people would pay almost the same amount for 16 Zen 3 cores as they would for 24 Arrow Lake cores.
Which I do wonder, though, still, like with Zen 6, like just based on the CPUs you've listed out there, how much people will, for the most part, care about those 24 cores. I mean, it will be great for productivity, and presumably will be also a very good gaming chip, because I think you get both advantages of that generally with the Zen. But I'm curious how much people will care about the 24 core, and they'll just want the 8 or maybe 10/12 cores still.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, I think, a lot. I don't know how many 8 cores there will even be. I mean, I think, like, if you think about it, there'd be almost no yields of that on 2 nanometer that need to be 8 cores, in my opinion. And before you get to 8, you get to 10. So I think you might have like a $300 10 core, or whatever the replacement is for an 8 core will probably at least be 10. So it might almost, and if you're still going to do 8 cores, frankly, just keep producing the 7700X 3D for 250. Like, that's really what you do on 4 nanometer or 9700X 3D eventually, maybe, who knows, just to save on cost.
Or maybe they'll also keep producing some version of Zen 3 forever also, because I don't know, at the low end, people still seem to be fine with that. Although I wonder if that there's a cost reason they have to get rid of that eventually. But
yeah, I mean, at a certain point, they're going to have to. I think they've done a last hurrah of Zen 3 this year. I think by 2028, it's going to be done. I mean, it's going to be like, come on, guys. Like, so there'll be some production maybe for servicing contracts, but I don't know. I mean, at that point, it will have been 8 years since Zen 6 Milan launched to Epic. I don't know how many of those will really, like, at a certain point, I think you just do like one big run, kind of like old ammunition for like antique pistols, like just one big run of old ammo that's put in a warehouse somewhere. You're not like, let's make one box of ammo a month. The AMD would just do a big run of Zen 3, throw them in a warehouse. That's what they'd probably do. Killing God writes in, when will the next AMD Halo APU be released? Will it be RDNA 5? Yes. Will it support more than 128 gigabytes? I mean, yeah. I mean, Gorgon Halo is going to support 192. Just curious, as I'm not paying much attention to the space due to high memory prices, and it seems like Apple is the leader by a wide margin versus Nvidia RTX Spark. Yeah. Seems outdated when announced with 2-year-old ARM CPU cores and M3 quality. Yeah, but guys, Nvidia just invented the personal computer with RTX Spark.
Really? Jesus. Wow.
That's what Jensen says.
Thank you, Jensen. Thank you, Jensen.
We all have our own personal theater.
I mean, he's right. My house has a home theater, Tom. Or my apartment has a home theater. Yours has a home theater. And the average person is spending, $10,000 on a PC?
Anyways, though, answering his actual question, I almost forgot to even answer it.
As we got into a meme hole, I guess. A meme hole.
Yeah, we started meme gooning.
No.
I mean, look, Helix launches late next year. It shares chiplets with RDNA 5. So like I've said, by late next year. I genuinely, or generally, I should say, think the way things are going to roll out is like Gorgon Point. Well, that's already out, but Gorgon Halo launches for back to school this year. Then they have that through the early spring. And that's when they launch Medusa Point. And Medusa Point will replace the Strix and the Kraken products down there. They'll still probably keep getting rid of Gorgon Halo stock. And then probably end of summer, right as back to school, is seeming to me like when they're going to target Medusa Halo. Hopefully they have Medusa. Yeah, I think Medusa Halo Mini might be ready the quarter two or something from what I'm hearing. So, all that's basically already in the leak, but to be more specific, yeah, I think they'll announce Zen 6 APUs early next year. I'd be surprised if Medusa Point wasn't out in the first half of the year, and I would expect socket compatible Medusa Halo Mini to be out probably by end of summer, and then that's when they roll out the big guns when they're done getting rid of Gorgon stock. All right. Let us now move on to story number 4. Xbox resets, less PlayStation support, less price hikes, admitting mishandling of RAM supply. So quoting here from Asha Sharma and Matt Booty from a myriad of sources, really, before I get to the write-up. Over the first 100 days together, we have started to revive Xbox. Our Game Pass team set to work fixing our offering, and after 8+ months of decline, I do like that they admit it, our service has started to grow again. We reintroduced exclusives with Gears of War E-Day in 2026, and Clockwork Revolution will continue this in 2027. Players can continue to expect signature exclusives from us every year now, and we are in a hardware component crisis, though. We believe we have been impacted more greatly than many of our peers, like PlayStation, due to the choices we made. Again, I like that they admit that. We are currently unable to make as many consoles as players want to buy, and we need a new business model and partnerships for hardware as we remain committed to building up towards Helix. Yep, exclusives are seemingly back even for Xbox. Continuing the masterful narrative shift, the new Xbox leadership announced the new Gears game, arguably the largest Xbox brand given Halo's long decline, honestly, will be a true pure console exclusive. And speaking of Halo, apparently they tried to make Halo, was it Combat Evolved? Combat Evolved remake and exclusive, but the PS5 release is already contractually locked, so it will be coming to PlayStation 5. Further, it is encouraging yet to see Xbox eat some crow as well. Of course, admitting past mistakes is easier for Sharma as she was the one who made them. But as we see the effort to revive Xbox Game Pass and their brand power, hopefully they stop behaving like Valve and keep proper hardware stockpiles for Helix. Now is where the potential rub comes in, though. Helix is an expensive premium device. It is still a Phil Spencer box after all, too. He's the one who came up with it. So as Sharma can do little to alter its base specs, comments on price and accessibility of gaming are thus very puzzling. And with console exclusives being revived, is the plan really for Helix to be the swan song anymore? Perhaps those new business models is some cloud gaming, perhaps cloud leasing and subscription add-on, but what if it is more consoles, not less? Recently, we confirmed Snowmass as a Zen 7 semi-custom APU we thought was for Valve, buckling their dumpster diving procurement strategy for Steam Deck 2. But what if it is for the Xbox? So that was conjecture by Carmen Cry. Yeah, I don't know. I doubt they do a Zen 6 console and then right away a Zen 7 one, but I guess you never know. And I guess don't doubt that this could be a lot of different things. I mean, they could be making a semi-custom APU for HP, or Asus. You never know for sure. Although, again, I think Steam Deck 2 is probably most likely. But Carbon Cry. But let me see here. So yeah, what do you think about all this? I mean, all of this debates. Will they do exclusives? How could they make sense? They're doing them.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the console wars thing. I think, generally speaking, somewhat more positively than a lot of other places have. So I guess the revival, it seems like they're trying to, to some extent, revive the console wars like they were a la the aughts. So, maybe that will benefit. Maybe we'll start to see more competition and hopefully an acceleration of the development timelines of games as they actually have to compete to match each other more and more again. So, I mean, I hope with the revival of exclusives at Game Pass, or not Game Pass, at Xbox, that's what we end up getting. And generally speaking, when a company is on the decline, once new leadership enters the picture, I like to see that they're acknowledging, at least to some extent, their past mistakes. So I still think from Microsoft, it's been mostly talk and not too much action. But, we've seen a little bit of action so far with the modest decrease in pricing that we've gotten out of Game Pass. What was that? Like a month or so ago. So I do just think, generally speaking, more positive direction from Xbox versus whatever Phil Spencer was doing under his leadership, or Xbox was doing under Phil Spencer's leadership.
Yeah, and just to make sure people understand what they mean by exclusive, I did just check. Gears of War E-Day is still listed on the Steam store. Yeah, and it will have full DualSense controller support. Ooh, that'd be interesting if you had like all the haptic bonuses on PC but not on Xbox. That'd be kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, look, I continue to think this is what they're going to do. This is what I would do if I was Xbox. If it is a multiplayer game that depends on tons of people being online, consider putting it on PlayStation the same way PlayStation's considering putting it on Xbox. That just makes sense. But if it's a single player game, or really a flagship tentpole game like Halo or Gears of War, even if that is online, I'm sorry, like, you don't need to put it on PlayStation if you want Xbox to be a thing. You put it on Helix and it can come to PC, but what do? You just have this moniker on the box. Who knows if they'll even have boxes for these anymore, but on the title card, we'll say runs best on Helix, and it is most optimized for Helix and then ported to PC. So if you want the most streamlined 4K 120 gaming experience, get an Xbox Helix. I don't think they need to limit games from going on PC to still have this perception of, if you're a gamer that likes Microsoft games, you can just get a Helix.
Yeah, and I guess just the one thing I'd add that I still hope remains, like, I don't know, I guess a difference between the way Microsoft and Sony deploys their strategies is, like, Microsoft just owns so much IP now that I don't think is traditionally associated with Microsoft, that I hope that continues to be viewed as somewhat differently from what they have versus like their more legacy studios. So like I would like to see Activision IP remain like kind of independent.
Call of Duty has to come to PlayStation, I think.
Yeah, especially something like Call of Duty. But I would like to see most Activision IP in general stay, not third party, but multi-platform. And more see their legacy studios, I guess what you would call them, as like the things that remain as console exclusive.
Fallout has to be on PlayStation too, right?
Yeah.
Like, for an example. Yeah. Because they were trying to pull some of that stuff with Starfield. And frankly, I think it completely kneecapped the hype of that game, that people on PlayStation couldn't play it. I think it just, and then it was on Game Pass, no one bought it. I think that was half of the reason the game kind of failed.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more of an argument, I guess, for Starfield to be an exclusive because it's a new IP, but it's still under Bethesda, which I do think Microsoft does need to look at Bethesda as different than like the Coalition or something.
Yeah, it'll just be interesting to continue. Like, it seems like Asha's making a lot of the right decisions, at least in terms of getting people to like her who are fans of Xbox, or were fans, now might be fans again. I just have to wonder, like, how much, again, of this toothpaste can you still put back in the bottle? Can you, because just right now, you bringing up Activision Blizzard, I was even thinking about that, but it's like, well, yeah, wait, what do they do with that? And it's almost like they should just spin that off. And that was Phil Spencer's up. Like, it is so weird to have this stuff under your umbrella that does nothing but possibly as an anchor on your earnings if they don't have a good year. It just doesn't make any sense. Or like spin off at least Blizzard. It makes no sense to own them. Even for like RTS games, they have Age of Empires. They have all of these IP they can use. They don't need Blizzard. It's very weird. And so I and then what they do with Game Pass, like they've talked about how Game Pass won't have as many day one games, or won't, like, so what do you really do with it? Does it just focus more on the streaming aspect? Maybe that's what the pivot is, but I don't know. I still wonder.
They're in a very weird position where they have so many different services, own so many different studios and companies now, that like I hope they're just sitting down with a strategy board, like, what do we do with Game Pass at this point? What do we do with Activision, Blizzard, and Tom, the most important one, King? Don't remember, they also own Candy Crush now. Like they really do need to figure out how all these services and studios are going to complement each other still, which I think is a kind of Herculean task.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so funny. It's the thing me and you said when the Game Pass wars started, when we were starting this podcast. Like, We said we think they're going to get too big. They're going to buy a bunch of studios, and then watch out below. Here come the firings. Here come the layoffs, and they're just going to gut a bunch of studios because they can't possibly manage that many. And I just think that's what's going to happen, even if it's the right decision. It's just sad that is like, it was so
obvious that it would happen. Yeah.
Like Phil, what the like your plan is you're going to buy up half of the games and make all of them unprofitable by not being on PlayStation. Like, what are you talking about?
I know. Yeah.
The only way that works is if Game Pass becomes like twice as big as Netflix. That was never going to, that's not something you should bet. Your business model should not depend on that for it to be profitable. That makes no sense that you just assume that. I don't know. It's bizarre. We'll see what happens. I would suggest they should keep some studios and probably spin off others, like maybe keep Bethesda, but I think, and maybe keep Activision, but you got to get rid of Blizzard and half of your studios. They just don't make sense.
Yeah, Bethesda maybe works as a Microsoft brand or as an more Xbox associated brand, because I feel like it's more.
I think that Fallout IP, you just want that for money reasons.
Yeah, and it's also, I do think Bethesda IP in general is more associated with PC than anything else, which is still Microsoft. So like maybe they could make that work. Still think it should Fallout should come to PlayStation though, because people on PlayStation buy Fallout. But
well, and it's like a mainstream TV show, so you really don't want to milk that on PlayStation. Come on. This piece of content is brought to you by the Minis Forum N5 Max, a next-generation AI NAS designed to combine private AI capability, large-capacity storage, high-speed data flow, and advanced infrastructure into one system. It is not just a traditional NAS, and it is not simply a compact local AI machine or a few AI capabilities sprinkled on. It is something that brings value together from several different types of capabilities: local AI, high-capacity long-term storage, high-speed NVMe working tier, high bandwidth networking, advanced infrastructure and recoverability, into a platform that is designed for future expansion as well. It comes with Strix Halo, an AI Max Plus 395, 16 core with 40 CUs of RDNA 3.5. It can also come with 64 gigabytes of LPDDR5X, 126 TOPS total, and it has a very cool, very sleek design. Honestly, this feels like one of the highest quality pieces of kit I've ever held, and it has two RJ45s, USB 4 V2, two of those, 80 gigabit per second, and then another USB 4 40 gigabit per second as well. If you are interested in this product and want to support Moore's Law is Dead, please click the link below, and if you buy it, make sure you use offer code BROKENSILICON to save as much as possible on it. Thank you to Minis Forum for sponsoring this piece of content, and, well, support a sponsor that supports Moore's Law is Dead, Minis Forum. Jensen Wang, Real Gamers Love DLSS 5, writes in and says, I believe the next Halo would be Halo 7, but given Xbox's naming history, I wouldn't be shocked if it was called Halo Combat Evolved again, to go along with their launches of Halo Combat Evolved, Halo Combat Evolved, and Halo Combat Evolved. He made a bunch of different versions of it. It is odd to me. I will say this. I did, of course, recently see the Halo Combat Evolved announcement, whatever that was, months or a year ago, and I was like, really? We're remastering one of them? You already have the Master Chief Collection with me and you own and played through on PC. We're doing it for PlayStation, and you're not just making it like why not just make it the Master Chief Collection for PlayStation and enhance it more, and then bring those as enhancements to the PC version? Like what you do with like BioShock or something. Like, this is so bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, they I don't get
you got to include Halo 2. That's the actually great one. Like, Halo 1 and 2 bundle would make so much sense, and it's just so odd to me how lazy this cash-in is on PlayStation, that apparently it was a mistake.
Yeah, and I don't know. I do think keeping Halo 1 separate from Halo 2, I guess, kind of, in a lot of ways, like magnifies like the negatives about Halo 1, like where if you pair them together, maybe people still remember them as this like masterpiece.
Because when you're beating the first Halo, you're like, wow, these last levels really seem phoned in, because they were, by the way. They had a deadline to meet if you read about it online. And if there's Halo 2, you're like, well, that wasn't that great, but let's beat Halo 2, like me and you were like.
Yeah, like Halo, I get that the first one is a revolutionary game for its time, incredibly important for just the history and development of games in general. But man, like you said, was it a phoned in game? I mean, it's almost like with Dark Souls 1, like you kind of forget because it's such an important game to the development of modern game history that the last like third of that game, they just like copied, pasted enemies because they forgot to finish it.
Yeah, I just want to point out how silly this is. If I search Halo on Steam right now, what I get is Halo. No, stop autofilling, Steam. Let me just search Halo. Good Lord. You get Halo Campaign Evolved, and then there's Halo the Master Chief Collection. That is so silly.
Yeah, that's silly.
Just them being next to each other like that. And then they're also selling, Halo 2 Anniversary, Halo ODS. Those are also broken apart separately. It just feels like this should be like an upgrade to the original.
They should figure out a way to put those all in one package.
And again, the reason this is existing on PC is, let's be honest, they're doing this so they can launch it on PlayStation, but now they wish they wouldn't have. It is very funny. Jensen Wang writes in again, says Xbox has a 3% margin apparently, and Activision Blizzard King has a 20 to 30% pre-acquisition margin level, and is like that makes it like a third of their revenue. So if everything else is break even, should they be making like 5 to 10% overall? I mean, outside of maybe Forza developers, then do we think anything in Xbox is making money beyond Activision and Forza?
I don't know.
This kind of say, well, you see these games come out in like, what is it, like Hi-Fi Rush, or like that one indie game that was beloved by a lot of people, and they just killed a studio. You've got to wonder if half of these games really aren't profiting. And like, I've seen all of these games. I was like, what is this? Like, there's like this Midnight Tale, some Southern game that was interesting looking. I'm like, I haven't seen any marketing for this. Like, how many of these games are they spitting out with no marketing that are just not selling well at all, despite getting good reviews sometimes?
Yeah, what with that and like what other games? I assume Bethesda's still churning out money on
Skyrim
on various Skyrim remasters, and what State of Decay had to have been a success. I can't remember who made those, but
well, considering how shitty the performance was, that must have been profitable, because they certainly didn't put any money into making that game run well. Which me and Dan like State of Decay a lot. We just can't believe every time we played it, like how janky the graphics performance are.
I mean, it feels
someone who will be getting the third one, I'm sure, at some point.
But yeah, they feel like we'll see what State of Decay 3 looks like. But yeah, State of Decay 2 still has a kind of indie feel to it, I guess, in a lot of ways, despite being owned by Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily in the good way, but I mean by indie feel. Fun game, though, still.
But that game was The South of Midnight, which is on sale on Steam right now. I would get that if I didn't have 1,000 games in my backlog. But yeah, so I think that's what we're saying, though. Like, I think the transition is going to be, they're going to have to kill a bunch of their studios and still lay off a bunch of people as they pivot towards a lot of their games being kind of exclusives and not on PlayStation again. But that means it should be okay, though, for some of them, because I have to wonder how much money Campaign Evolved is going to make with Halo. And if they focus more and become more lean, maybe it'll work out again, though. It's just sad we had to go through any of this rigmarole anyways.
Yeah.
Salty Internet Pirate writes in and says, in 2018 we got Dad of War. In 2028 we're going to get Mom of War. Do you think we'll get Son of War in 2038?
Maybe.
I don't know, but I think the new God of War looks very good. And if I'm being honest, hopefully not. Hopefully they make something new. Granted, that's what I said a year ago, and now I think the new God of War looks sick. But I know they were working on something else that got canceled. I want them to try something else.
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to see when a studio tries to branch out. Like, it's always a little nerve-wracking, but, we got The Last of Us because of it. So
Exactly. Let's move on to actually another Xbox story. Quoting here from Reuters before we get to the write-up. Despite recent moves, Microsoft is considering an Xbox spinoff, apparently. Right, Reuters. Microsoft is considering options for its Xbox gaming unit, including a potential spinoff or restructuring as a wholly owned subsidiary. No restructuring is imminent. To be clear, all options remain on the table, though. And Asha Sharma, who took charge as CEO of the gaming unit in February of 2026, plans to increase spending to accelerate development of new Xbox titles from its most successful franchises, including Halo and Fallout, and The Elder Scrolls, a report said. So what should we make of this report, though? Is the recent Xbox turnaround just a planned prelude to a shocking twist? Or is this just fake news? Well, honestly, the information seems pretty solid and the report makes sense. It is clear that Sharma and her team are doing their best to turn Xbox around, but it also seems to be becoming clear that if they can't, if she isn't quick enough to get there, the patience is low at the very top of Microsoft. Now, why would they be considering something so drastic right now? Well, Xbox is eating billions that Microsoft leadership could be spending on everyone's favorite thing, AI. Spinning it off or siloing it into a subsidiary removes the resource drain while making Microsoft look better financially and thus allow stock issuance or cheaper debt for more AI investment. However, this is not acute. As the report continued, Sharma still does plan to increase gaming development and spending. So sure, maybe that is in part just to fatten up a pig with big game releases, but it also indicates nothing drastic is imminent, at least not yet. So the main takeaway is in how we should see Sharma's next steps by how they improve Xbox as part of Microsoft and how it makes Xbox more appealing as a semi or maybe eventually fully independent company should they lose interest or run out of time. And by the way, a last minute addition while we were recording, Xbox is losing the dev that made Hellblade, which is very sad. I thought I never played the sequel. You know, the first one was very good, but I don't want to say funny because it's sad news, but it's like, Dan, in the previous story, me and you were just talking about, get ready. If they turn things around, still expect them to gut half of their studios. Well, we're recording Hellblade. That studio's gone.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see a reality where instead more of those get spun off independently or sold off or something, so they have a second/third chance, however you want to look at it, to prove themselves with. I mean, I think Microsoft's largely failure to shepherd such a large flock of studios, but I mean, you and I said we would think that you would see these studios closing back when the mad dash of acquisitions by
we've been saying this for years,
especially led by Xbox started, and here it is. Like, but
yeah. Go on.
I mean, more broadly on the story, like I don't know, just as far as like the veracity of it. I mean, it's Reuters. I think Reuters generally has pretty reliable reporting, but
yeah, they do. Yeah, I don't really know what much else to say about this. I guess I'm glad, maybe we'll see, but like I'm glad that the rumor is they have a set amount of time. If you ask me, it's this generation, or honestly, Xbox tends to, I shouldn't say Xbox, Microsoft corporate tends to not even have the patience of an entire gen, right? Like Xbox 360 got all of these, paid for temporary exclusives from third parties. And like they couldn't even last a decade with the 360 before they were just not really supporting it anymore. And then the PS3 just killed all momentum. Again, like we've said before, I think really 360 losing momentum was just as much what killed Xbox One as the initial reveal. Mm-hmm. By the time Xbox One was even revealed, people were kind of sick of Xbox anyways because there were just no games. And you see the same thing with Xbox One. Like they have some exclusives at first, then they just, I guess that's the one where maybe they stuck with it the most is there's Xbox One X or something. But Series X and Series S, I mean, I'm genuinely floored at how quickly it went from we're going to take on PS5 to like we're not even going to support Halo Infinite with DLC. So I would suggest that we're going to see a repeat of the Series X and S gen, and if it doesn't go better or feel like it's really becoming more sustainable, they fatten up a pig and try to sell it off for whatever they think it's worth, $100 billion or whatever. And
well, yeah, I think that's what will happen. Based on the number of studios they own at this point, yeah, let's hope they can.
Well, let's see how many they own in 5 years, actually. But
yeah, they would get $100 billion for it because just in acquisitions, those recent acquisitions of Bethesda and Activision alone, like what, that's like 80 billion. I mean, not 80, like 70 billion. But yeah, I mean, I'm a little hopeful to see that. Like, to me, it seems like I don't know, with Xbox and with Asha Sharma at the helm, we might be seeing Microsoft say, "All right, this is your chance. You get a legitimate effort to turn this ship around." But it's been a bloated, unprofitable ship for 25 years, and we're not afraid to cut the weight at this point.
Yeah, again, I'd prefer they spin it off with a bunch of functioning studios and all of the bloat removed from this division. Unfortunately, they saw the Hellblade deficits bloat, I guess, but I'd rather that than them just axe and kill everything and just say goodbye forever. But, that's me saying that without knowing who would buy them. Like, you never know if just a Hatchet Men company buys them, strips it for parts, and just uses the Xbox to sell fridges, we don't know. Or it could be, I don't know, probably not Apple, but like you also don't know, like maybe, I don't know if Amazon, I don't know, like who comes in and just actually, like, maybe there could be one big studio that comes in, they actually do a good job with it. We'll see.
Or a huge push into mobile gaming, Tom, with King at the forefront in Candy Crush.
See, that's what I'm saying, is you don't know if they're going to do that, and they're just going to make Gears of Candy Crush.
Yeah.
And then put Xbox stickers on everything. Although that almost looks like that's what Phil Spencer was going to do anyways. So
yeah, I know.
I don't know. It couldn't be worse than whatever he was going to do. So we'll see. But I guess I just say one more time, yes, Xbox might turn around. It seems like Asha's really going to try and seems to have the right sort of mentality to be someone who would turn it around. But nothing's changed from what we've been saying a year ago in that things are dire. This is it. If Helix doesn't do well, it's very clear Xbox is done. And when I say do well, I'm not even sure they are like, oh, better sell 60 million consoles instead of 40. I think it's like, are we actually consistently profiting? And does it seem like we're on an upward trajectory again? Like, does the directionally do things look good? If they don't, they're not. Like, I don't know what it was, like Xbox One sold like 40, 50 million. Xbox Series might be selling 30 to 40. If they see this sell 20, I think they're done.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know how aggressive they're thinking with it, but yeah, I mean, I'm hoping like even just a positive trajectory is some sign of a positive indicator for Microsoft, because I don't know if they do spin off the company or silo it into its own little thing. I do get worried that Xbox is or Xbox is going to have a lot of casualties with that with that stable of studios they have.
All right. Well, you said the word aggressive. Let's move on to story number 6 here regarding a company that seems to be anything but aggressive with story number 6. Steam Machine supposedly shipped to reviewers, quoting from Notebook Check, and then sadly, it's Bradley. A new leak circulating in the Valve community suggests that the Steam Machine may finally be nearing release. According to Steam Hardware Update on X, the first review, which is not an official account, by the way, the first review units have been sent to reviewers and content creators. The report claims that the review embargo will lift after June 23rd. And while pre-order and pricing announcements are said to be planned for some time between the 22nd and the 30th, if accurate, a launch in July or August kind of seems plausible unless they're going to rush this out the last day of June. And then let's see. And there was also some pictures that are emerging of people who have taken it apart from different angles. Also, sadly, it's Bradley tweeted, the first Steam frame imports arriving in Valve's USA warehouses are here. So perhaps we could see a Steam Machine launch soon. And given Valve has locked themselves into launching in the first half of this year, doing so in July would already be delayed even against that generously vague original timeline. What further supports this leak is the supposed pricing announcement at best a day before reviews. That would at least fit Valve's embarrassingly amateurish conduct through the Steam Machine saga so far. We also know that Valve has now imported literally tons of frames, making a joint Steam Machine Steam Frame launch possible. Remember that the frame also has RAM, 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5X. Ooh, that will make that expensive right now. It would make sense for it to get similarly delayed by Valve's negligent parts procurement. What we still don't know, though, is the price. Some companies like AMD would at least start leaking prices to gauge the market reaction. But I don't know. Fitting with Valve supposedly not having a price for the machine yet, no suggestion has made its way to the public. So, yep, no one knows the price. It does seem like this is in the hands of some people. Pictures are emerging here and there of the Steam machine. Also, we know the Steam frame from Sadly It's Bradley, friend of the show, who I trust to know what he's talking about, is here. I have to say that Carbon Cry did this write-up that I agree with Carbon Cry's insinuation that, like, well, if they're going to get all these Steam frames in right now, maybe the only way they could even try to make a horribly priced Steam machine look good is if they're like, for $2,000 you get a Steam machine and a Steam frame. It's still, now that I say that, that sounds terrible to me actually, but like that would be the only thing that could save the Steam machine. Is the best VR device ever works best with this.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like, I guess if they could sell it as, or like hack it as, like, this is a like great range, or like a great pairing for like mid-range VR, like they can do some bundle that gives them the best like kind of mid-range VR support out there somehow with the Steam machine and frame VR. Maybe that will be convincing for some people, but like, I do get worried about, or not worried, but I do wonder how big of a push VR, or how big of it matters to do a big VR push these days. Because I don't think VR is ever completely going away, but I do feel like it was definitely a fad back, like what, probably 5 to like the range of like 5 to like 8 years ago.
It was a fad, but I would say it was a fad in the way the Wii or Play and Kinect and PlayStation Move were. I mean, people, for example, make fun of PlayStation Move. I believe it sold like 20 million units or something absurd for something that didn't have that many games for it, really. And of course, the Wii sold over 100 million. Kinect sold, I think, 10s or 20 million or something like that. So, you know, I mean, like, it was a fad, but a fad that, and I'm saying VR is like those, like tens of millions of units sold, games built for it. I would say it was like, when you say it's a fad, it's not like, you know.
Well, I mean, like a fad.
I don't know. I guess you say skinny jeans are a fad, and hundreds of millions of people wore those. So maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. What I mean by fad isn't that like it completely goes away, but just that it's going to be a thing that probably has some amount of staying power. But I think it had a brief period where it looked like it could go more mainstream than it ended up going, and it's kind of receding back to being a more niche product / experience, whatever you want to call it. And like I don't know when or if VR will ever get to a point where it does truly break into that mainstream thing where just everybody has a VR device. But I think clearly this first and like second and third wave, I guess, of VR headsets that you've seen have proven to be more of a thing that inspired a lot of an initial interest, because I think the tech was finally there, but just didn't end up getting supported enough or having enough interest for everybody to want to buy it.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see what happens. I really don't know much to say about this. I mean, at first I was like, oh, well, maybe a bundle with Steam machine. I mean, unless that bundle with the Steam frame is $1,500 or less, I actually kind of take that back, because it's $2,000. I don't think so. I think everyone gets the $1,200 or whatever it costs Steam frame, and then they just plug it into their 3080 desktop or whatever they have and call it a day. I just, there's no way around it.
Yeah.
We'll see what the price is. It seems like it's imminent. Again, I hope there's some degree of realizing this rant I did before, I think the last episode with you or something, of just everybody. Was Valve ever really going to make any notable amount of money off the Steam machine? It was always a PR stunt to try to lay the groundwork for an OS and like build into the console market. Even if they only sell, it doesn't matter how many they sell, 1 million units, 50,000. This is a rounding error on how much money Valve makes a year, even if they sell it at $100, $200 loss. I hope they realize this is marketing, and if they launch something everyone makes fun of, they will, the god will have been wounded and won't look like a god anymore. And Steam is seen as the god of gaming. So
yeah, and just as a more marketing push than anything, that I think it's becoming apparent this is just, man, why didn't you just get this thing out the door, get some good reviews earlier in like March? It's just ridiculous.
But yeah, we'll see what happens. We should probably just move on.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. Moving on to the final story. Jessie here really can't take it when she sees rabbits out in the wild. I'm not kidding. She wants to chase them so much that she starts visibly shaking while she stares at them. And honestly, I'm kind of the same when it comes to overpriced Microsoft software. I can't believe that some people, especially in these times where many component costs are inflated, would waste hundreds of dollars overpaying for Microsoft Office or Windows. And you don't have to if you go to CDkeyoffer.com. That's right, CDkeyoffer.com is a sponsor of this piece of content, and they are, I believe, the longest running main, large sponsor for Moore's Law is Dead, going all the way back when I lived in a different state. And that's because they provide reliable keys for Microsoft Office Professional and for Windows 11. And, they also have an offering of a ton of different games that you can get on a discount as well. And if you want to support the channel, then go to CDkeyoffer.com today through the link in the description. Just clicking on that link helps. But then also get yourself these keys if you need them and save by using offer code BrokenSilicon to save 25% on all Microsoft software, and then Die Shrink to save 3% on everything else on the website. Once again, thanks to CDkeyoffer.com for sponsoring yet another, maybe 1,000th piece of content that they've sponsored. And thank you all for supporting a sponsor that supports Moore's Law is Dead. Story number 7, Raptor Lake Next rumors emerge. All right, quoting from Tom's Hardware and then Jakin on Twitter. So Tom from Tom's Hardware, at Computex, Tom's Hardware heard that Intel has plans to launch Raptor Lake Next CPUs within the first half of 2027. The CPUs would mark the third refresh of Intel's Raptor Lake range. Some might argue the fourth, considering these are all really just Alder Lake Plus. Jakin on Twitter, a leaker I consider pretty reliable, said Raptor Lake Silicon, not Bartlett Lake is what I'm hearing. No fresh features from Raptor Lake are, by the way, such as Wi-Fi 7, fast auto APO, and it's not a new stepping either. So, yep, just like AMD, Intel's pivoting to support their DDR4 platform. With Intel's case, it's LGA 1700 in view of the current memory market conditions. But unlike AMD, which can just re-release by now a classic goated CPU like the 5800 X3D, Intel really has nothing but warehouses full of Raptor Lake. Not only are these chips, which will eventually all kill themselves, not only are these chips that will eventually all kill themselves, Jakin's insistence that these will lack some 14th gen features implies that these could be old 13th gen stock or something. Remember, they rebranded Alder Lake as Raptor Lake. So there could be a game of telephone here where it's really Alder Lake, Raptor Lake rebrands that they're calling Raptor Lake refresh. And given these are to launch next to Nova Lake, it seems, and worst, an LGA 1700 computer has Alder Lake, it doesn't really make sense for anyone. Why get a marginally better CPU on your old platform when you know it will die anyways, or it's really no different than something you could have bought on discount for years, until short platform support bites them again here too, unlike AMD, which can offer an update for even Zen 1 users. Yeah, I think AMD just announced some new Zen 1 CPU. I don't know. But yeah, so I also wanted to add on to this write-up. So I reached out to a bunch of sources over the weekend, and almost none of them have heard about this. An OEM said, won't say which one, person there said, haven't heard a single thing. This is someone that often knows actually quite a lot about what's coming down the pipeline. An Intel sales partner told me that they heard about this idea 2 years ago. I was like, what do you mean you heard about a Raptor Lake refresh or whatever we're on? I don't remember anymore. 2 years ago. It's like, oh yeah, like they said, like after that, there might be another one in 2026 or 2027. But this person hasn't gotten an update since, so they have no idea. And then someone at Intel told me that they heard there could be some new Raptor Lake chips or continued supply of existing ones, but wasn't sure which one it was and had no specifics. So for me, from what I'm hearing, either I just happen to have like a half a dozen sources that somehow didn't hear this. Could be true. It's happened before. It can happen. Not everyone at every company knows everything. And every now and then, if it's like if you know 5 people that know everything you'd expect them to know at a company half the time, there's like
every once in a while,
multiply that together, there's like a 5% chance none of them heard about it. That could be that. But otherwise, I think maybe someone at Computex has gotten their wires crossed, and this is just a continue of existing supply, or whatever's coming is so uninteresting that Intel isn't briefing anyone, which could be that as well. Or, and either way, I think if this is the first half of 2027, who cares? I'm sorry. Like, this seems like classic Intel if that's the case, because this would be like, we're going to help the DDR4 market in the year that is after the year you actually need this. This would be like when they launched the A770 right after the mining boom was over. Like, the only thing that would have made horrible Alchemist make sense is if it launched with decent supply and 16 gigs of RAM when no one could get any Nvidia or AMD GPUs. Then they launch it right when there's like hundreds of thousands of 4090s and 4080s you can buy. I don't know. So I think 2027 is too late, honestly. But I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
I mean, I guess if they have a bunch of stock of Raptor Lake sitting in a warehouse somewhere, hopefully this is like cheaper than just going the way of the ET video game and burying it, because like that's the only reason I could imagine like you would want to release this in 2027. Like, I mean, Raptor Lake was pretty poorly received at the time. It's on a dead platform. There's no reason to get this unless you can get it for like pennies. But
yeah. So again, I'm going to put this in the same bucket as Bartlett Lake. Who gives a shit? Guys, who cares? It's 10 nanometer in 27. In 27. Alder Lake launched on 10 nanometer. When was that? Like 2021, I believe. Something, and before like that, actually, Tiger Lake was on 10 nanometer. Pretty good. Just not on desktop, sadly. Like, this is really, this would be like getting excited about, a new Turing release. Like, why should we care that Turing is launching or something like that? Like, who cares? If you have DDR4, I'm sorry, the 5800 X3D is a better choice. And I don't know. Besides that, I just, RAM, there's still ways like at a Micro Center to get free RAM with your motherboard. And I've seen deals at some places in Europe as well. It's not as prevalent, but it happens. And like in 2027, like when they're launching Zen 6, I just think the RAM prices won't be perfect. They won't be as good as 25, obviously, but I don't know if they ever will be again. That was rock bottom for pricing. That wasn't really even normal. I wouldn't say it was too cheap. I like when things are cheap, but like the very bottom of pricing isn't what you should assume it should always be. I think RAM will be probably cheaper next year, maybe 10%, 20%. And I just don't, you have to think about this. How much money are we really saving? Like if I go to
how
eBay.
Much is DDR4 right now?
Like let me just check this here, because I continue to think people don't understand how good Zen 6 and Nova Lake are going to be. Like, let me put 32 gigabytes desktop DDR4. All right, if I want to get DDR4 on eBay, buy it now as always, $135. Right. Okay. Now, if I want to get 32 gigabytes of DDR5 on eBay, buy it now. Yeah, so no, this is going to be easy to make my point. So I'm seeing 32 gigs of DDR4 for like 135 to 150-ish. Sometimes they're selling them for 200 though, actually. Okay, for DDR5, I'm seeing decent kits. Yeah, DDR5 6400 for open box, $355. So I know it's like over twice as much, but don't think of it that way. It's really like you're spending an extra $100, $200. All right, hear me out. If your desktop, and I know you might get cheaper motherboards, whatever. Let's say it's $300 difference. Okay, the 9850 X3D is like double the performance of the 5800 X3D, or at least it's 50% faster. I expect Zen to be more than like 30% faster than that. So let's say, all right, you save $300 going with a 5800 X3D instead of going with Zen 6 X3D, or even maybe just Zen 6 could manage this because it might be 7 gigahertz. You're getting half the performance at least. You save, so now your desktop's like 1200 instead of 1500. You save 20, 30% to have half the CPU performance. In price performance terms, this is worse price performance. So who cares about any of this stuff next year? Nova Lake and Zen 6 will make this all a joke. And remember, Zen 5 will be discounted. I'm sorry. This you only need this now. I don't think it matters next year because next gen products will be it'll be like Ampere. It's like complaining you had to get a 3070 like I did for 600 instead of 500. It's like, well, the 2080 Ti was $1,300. You're still saved in price performance by waiting for the next gen, even in times of shortages because of how much faster they were.
Yeah, I mean, part of me, I do just think at this point, like, I don't know why this would be coming so slow to the market. Like, yeah, if they could just drop this next week, I guess maybe it would be seem a bit less dumb. But like, it just seems to me like these companies, I mean, kind of like what AMD did with the 3100 re-release or whatever they just released, if I'm remembering correctly.
Sure.
But like, I don't know. It just seems like there's a kind of desperate scramble by both AMD and Intel right now to just have products out there that have a vast diversity of types of RAM you can get them for. So there's open options available because I guess I don't know like what they know will and I guess they don't know what will and won't be like affordable to the average person going forward. And I don't know if you have offerings that have both DDR4 and DDR5 with like cheap and expensive motherboards for both. I guess that gives you a lot of options to try to keep people continuing to buy new systems, even if some of those those offerings they're trying to do are just outdated tech that really doesn't make sense to buy anymore.
You know, and here is really the only world where I think something like this would make sense. Number one, it would need to launch now or in a month. Mm-hmm. Number two, I would say it should be Bartlett Lake based. Like it should be like they disable 2 cores to 10, you know, it's 10 cores. 2 of them have been disabled, but it still gets like the full L3 cache. So it almost has an X3D like effect. They push it to like 6 gigahertz, like a 6 gigahertz unified 10 P core extra cache chip that they drop for like $300 or whatever, $350. You know, they price match the 5800 X3D, and frankly, that would probably beat it slightly in performance. With 10 P cores and no E cores, it might actually not get too hot. And it's like, yeah, so look, if you have an old DDR4 system, you can get this thing that games as well as Arrow Lake, as well as almost probably Zen 4 X3D, maybe not quite there, but pretty close. Mm-hmm. And it's cheap, and it's like, yeah, that would make sense. But anything else, none of this makes sense. And again, the number one thing was it needs to launch like now, not next year, where you're like, why am I spending $300 for this thing that ties a 5800 X3D in gaming or like narrowly beats it when AMD has like a $450 10 core that is double the performance? I mean, I'll pay the extra 10%, 20% to total build cost of my desktop to get a CPU that just runs circles around it. That is actually better price performance.
Yeah. I mean, if it's coming out next year, I hope they're doing it for like i3 prices, but
yeah,
we'll see.
We'll see. All right. So that is the final story here. Let us now move on to the wrap up. These are, of course, the stories that we think deserve a mention, but that did not deserve their full like 15-minute conversation. I saw Intel's releasing more IBO games. Again, I think this is kind of in preparation for Nova Lake, where they're going to like try to have basically all mainstream games have the Intel binary optimization tool running anything that can help it, because that is the only way they even get close to Zen 6, I believe, in gaming. We'll see, but there's more evidence. Also, there's a rumor that the MSI Claw, that was the Panther Lake handheld from MSI that looks really awesome in my opinion and was rumored to be $1,500. It might be $1,800. Okay, I guess now we really are. I'd still say it's probably the best because what Strix Halo handhelds are like $2,000. I'd still probably choose this over that. But if they're the same price as Strix Halo, I actually go, which one will have better driver support? I don't know. I know this one will have better battery life, but you do have to consider longevity of the drivers. And if like another, Crimson Desert game comes out that just doesn't even support Intel.
Yeah, that's just a massive open question with everything Intel releases as far as graphics goes, is how well will it be supported. I mean, I guess we'll see, but
Also, Microsoft kills the Copilot plus PC Advantage marketing and that entire badging, and also now finally allows local AI to run on RTX 30 series or better Nvidia GPUs that have at least 6 gigabytes of RAM. You know, I guess good for Nvidia, but I have to say this was like the dumbest thing ever, where for a while this branding only even applied, I believe, to Qualcomm. Just what
Oh, yeah.
stupidity. The branding thing itself is dumb, but my God. Yeah, of course an NVIDIA GPU should be considered Copilot capable. I mean, what the hell?
Yeah. At the time, it really kind of felt like a nudge Microsoft was trying to give Qualcomm in the for free marketing. So they had the appearance of people having more.
So all the money they
available to
spent
them.
getting Exilate off the ground could maybe be realized. Also, I don't know if you saw this, Dan. Well, you can open the link, but 2080 Ti Super, there it is. It had 12 gigabytes of RAM. What's interesting is the Ti was missing from the faceplate because I guess they knew it would have the Ti faceplate, but they didn't manufacture it. So the engineering samples were just given RTX 2080, some 2080 outer components. But yeah, there it is. There were always these rumors that there's a 2080 Ti Super 12 gigabyte. Then Nvidia was like, what's the point? AMD's not even close to our performance.
Well, maybe in this current market, Tom, we'll get an official release of the 2080 Ti Super now.
Exactly. That is like what you're talking about with Raptor, like refresh. It's just like, why? 2080 Ti 12 gigabyte? Like what? So like 9050 XT perform? Like maybe? Like who cares?
Sure, why not?
With double the power consumption. Ooh. Let's see. I just thought this was interesting to point out that solar is now beating coal in power generation in the United States. So I just want to point this out because, you know, it's ancillary to gaming and hardware. It's still tech. I have solar panels on my house. They work fantastic. I mean, we never have to worry about a power outage again. We're saving hundreds of dollars a month. But I don't think it's remotely as expensive as people think it is, unless you get sucked into some salesman, which I've run into these crappy ones in Nashville that are like, you want to give 60 grand for solar, and then like find the right company and you'll find it's not that bad. But I think this is just worth pointing out, just on my soapbox a little bit here. Coal is more niche than solar now. Like any idea that like we call these renewables, like there's some separate basket of energy. Coal should be seen as niche. Like,
coal
like
should
some
be
old weird way of powering stuff because it is now below solar.
Yeah, like a boat that's powered by like some weird synthetic whale oil or whatever.
Yeah, like Russia likes to do with their aircraft carriers or whatever it is. I just throwing that out there. Solar is more mainstream than coal, and yet so much time is spent talking about coal. It's just such a waste of time. It's so stupid. Jensen Wang writes in, NVIDIA is fairly valued, and says, if water usage is such a concern for AI data centers, shouldn't the movement around data centers' use of water instead be focused on getting golf courses and similar features to move to turf of some kind? Compute, not necessarily for AI, is generally useful for a lot more economic activity than giant swaths of grass that you can't build houses on. And scientific advances that ensure golf courses use real gas. And I guess that's the thing, too. The same goes for even green lawns in general. To be honest, you could argue using native plants and turf is a lot smarter than wasting water on your lawn. Yeah, that's a whole other debate. Yeah, I mean, I just brought this up here because I also think this is a fair point that AIs wastes a lot of energy. But the point really is that it's making people's costs go up, in my opinion. I think from what I've heard from experts, like the water usage thing is vastly overblown.
Yeah, it's very overblown, and
that's not the issue.
It gets a little dumb to me sometimes when I'm like watching. I've seen some like YouTube videos before that are like on the subject of AI, and they talk about like, and based on like my search, it will use this AI query I made cost this much money, which I'll like offset by donating to charity, and it's like, oh. I mean, I'm glad you donated to charity. I'm not going to knock that. But like, sure. I don't think that I think you're overblowing it a little bit. And I think a lot of the time the amount of water used to like do a query or do or use an AI engine is sometimes conflated with the amount of water used to train engines. And I mean, even then, both of them are way overblown. And I think there are far more pertinent issues that AI is causing than the water usage. Like making some towns seemingly unlivable because of energy spikes and, I don't know, some weird hum that seems to be affecting people.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're just trying to be fair here. We're obviously very critical of AI. I mean, go watch my new cut down yield that condenses how I think the AI bubble is likely to pop. You can see I'm very critical of it, but we don't want to be unfair here. Like some of the AI hate, it's like, well, it isn't entirely useless. I use it all the time. And no, it's not like burning oceans of water. Like be smart about your criticism or no one will take your problems with AI seriously.
Yeah.
So, all right. And then we have a few more AMD stories here in the wrap up. So let me see. I'll do this one first. AMD expands ASD support. So what is that? That's advanced shader delivery, right? That now works all the way from RDNA 1 to RDNA 4. It's cool to see that. More support. And speaking of more support, so there was this interesting interview. This could have been a story, but I decided not to make it one because it's kind of like a brief update. But like, I guess AMD's chief software officer, Andrei, oh boy, Zdravkovic, I hope I said that right, and Terry Makedon, senior director of software at AMD, were talking to Tech Power Up, and they said that actually they want RDNA 3's FSR 4.1 quality to match RDNA 4's. I don't know if that's really possible, but that's interesting. Like if RDNA 3 and 3.5 AMD, if both of them get FSR 4, and then unlike like the digital foundry testing of like Steam Deck's running it, like they find actually it runs it almost the same as RDNA 4 to a degree that will make the wait kind of worth it. Like if it's significantly better than what we saw from like people modding.
Yeah, I mean, it'll definitely make it feel more worth it. Still, what the hell, AMD? Get your software support up to snuff. But yeah.
And then final one here. I just want to point out that I did leak that there's some semi-custom APU out there called AMD Snowmass. I believe I leaked that in the latest loose ends. Not much more I know about besides that. It's Zen 7. It's a semi-custom APU, and it is called Snowmass. My suggestion was this might be the Steam Deck 2's APU. I've seen people suggest, could it be a new Xbox thing? Or I stand by it's probably most likely
Steam Deck 2.
Steam Deck 2, but because I don't really, but again, it's either that or I think it could be anything. I mean, look, HP, Dell could order a custom APU technically if they wanted to. So we'll see, but just FYI, have that on your radar. And I think I'll probably know a lot more about that actually in the coming months. Techno writes in and says, just as a recap for your average person, can you explain the difference between Prometheus and Snowmass? Yeah, well, Prometheus is just the code name for the Zen 7 classic cores, I believe. That's it. It's, I forgot I think one of them might have been Monarch for one of these generations and so on and so forth. That's all you need to know. Like, it's not its own APU or whatever. Now, Snowmass, I believe that's kind of like Grimlock. It's like its own, or Bumblebee, like APU thing. That's it. Or like Orion or something. Or Aerith for the Steam Deck 1, I believe is the code name. All right. And we have one more here from Dangerman1337. We have a voicemail.
Hi, John and Dan. I was wondering about Zen 7 and mobile products. Could it be possible 2029 products will be Zen 7 RDNA 5 and then 2030 Zen 7 Plus and RDNA 6? I have reminded myself about Zen 3, which had Vega for 2021 mobile products, and then 2022 the Hybrid branch, which was Zen 3 Plus and RDNA 2. Could they repeat the same with mobile laptops again with Zen 7? I can see a Zen 7 Plus and RDNA 6 forming the basis of a Z4E with the Grimlock premium being skipped effectively.
Yeah, so I'm going to be honest. I've been getting endless questions like this in the past month, since I've like codified Zen 6 and like summarized like all my Zen 6 rumors in one place, and also done a bunch of Zen 7 leaks that are basically the same thing all in one place, like everything you should expect. People are like, well, what about Zen 7, Grimlock's architecture for the APU, the GPU and the APU? And what about Zen 8? Will there be a Zen 7 Plus? And I think my answer is going to keep being, guys, we don't know yet, and AMD might not, and don't worry. Like, I mean, ultimately, because what? Medusa's launching in like 6 to 8 months or something. That'll have RDNA 4M at first, and then I believe by back to school they'll have the RDNA 5 Premium and Halo models coming out. And then Zen 6 RDNA 5 APUs come out with Xbox and PlayStation. And if I remember correctly, my roadmaps of like Zen 7 maybe launching at the end of 28 or like, like somewhere around there or something like that. It's like, so then I expect early 29 to be like Zen 7 RDNA 6 or something, but we'll see. Don't forget that like I had numerous leaks a year ago that like had Medusa Point have some docs said RDNA 4, some said RDNA 3.5 plus, and people thought that meant that 3.5 plus is a thing. It's like, no, they just mean later than RDNA 3.5. But it wasn't until a month ago, I think someone else actually broke this story first, that it's like, oh, there's something called RDNA 4M. It's basically a hybrid of RDNA 3.5 and 4 to take up as little room as possible. Will basically be an RDNA 4 performance in an APU.
Yeah.
Like we don't know. There could be an RDNA 5M, 5.5, and people say it would make sense for it to be 5.5. Maybe there's only been 1.5 architecture out of AMD. We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, and it also just honestly depends on how they advertise it, I guess, too, because you might see them just come out with something to market like a year later that's slightly different from what they released a year earlier that they still advertise as like Zen 7. But
yeah, so I'm not trying to be dismissive or act like this is annoying to talk about. It's not, but I just think I don't think AMD can really even be sure quite yet. Like, let's get towards the end of this year, and then I'll probably have a lot of Zen 8 information, and then we'll see what they're doing. But there's a chance they might just be deciding, depending on how well RDNA 4M performs, RDNA 5, how their market share is doing, and then decide what they're going to do after that. And now, as for all the Zen 7 Plus stuff people have been talking about, I think we kind of got like Zen 3 was really good, and so was Zen 2, and that's why they kept using it with newer graphics architectures and several APUs for years on that node. We don't know how fast they'll get past A14 for Zen 7. If there's room for an A12 die shrink, like if to get a Zen 7 Plus on AM5, if in fact actually RAM prices will collapse, CDR6 will be reasonably priced. They're like, nope, we're going straight to Zen 8 in 2029. All of these things we just can't say yet. And basically if Zen 7 is a home run and DDR6 is insanely expensive, sure, I think they do a Zen 7 Plus on AM5. If DDR prices collapse and Zen 8 looks just as good as Zen 6 and Zen 7, relatively speaking, I think they push for AM6 sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
we don't know yet. All right, I think that is going to do it for this episode. Dan, any final words?
I don't think so.
He never does. And I think, though, that you should like this video, comment down below, share it, hype it, and please make sure that you are subscribed to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel. Subscribing really does help more people find us. And then as well, consider joining the Moore's Law is Dead Patreon. If you want more console talk, we just had a big die shrink about consoles that just came out amongst a lot of our AI chatter. If you think we haven't beaten the AI horse enough with a bat, well, there's a whole like 70-minute podcast we did that recent cut down yield was pulled from, where we go over exactly our issues with AI, the things we actually like about AI, how much we use it, how we think AI ends. You can get access to that just at the $2 tier of the Patreon. And then, of course, there's higher tiers that give you access to all this other stuff, like a Discord with thousands of people. So if you have extra money, whether it's $1, $2, $5 a month, please consider supporting us there. We'd love to talk to you. And otherwise, everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and have a good rest of your week.
Goodbye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarked by me, the creator, Tom. However, Moore's Law is Dead is much more than just one man. It is a team with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance also provided by Carbon Cry and Carrie No Sugata. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About about support page in the event you want to hire me for consulting work, or hire Gerard for audio work, Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or are interested in working with Carbon Cry or Kari no Sugata as well, you can find all of our information there. You can also find our long-term sponsors there and show them some love for helping make this work possible. Additionally, if you are a fan and would like to mail Moore's Law is Dead some love in a letter or with hardware donations, please mail parcels to Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee 37206. And speaking of fans, patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content possible. Every month and every day, actually, depending on the person, me, Gerard, Dan, Jean-Philippe, and more are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of entertaining content and investigative journalism that aims to be as independent as possible from outside influence. Only direct funding from fans can make this possible in the modern era. And so if you have any extra money every month, even just $1 or $2, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. All members of the Moore's Law is Dead Patreon, even down to the $1.28 128-bit tier, get access to a catalog of dozens of essential Die Shrink episodes and the ability to ask guest questions ahead of Broken Silicon recordings. Additionally, higher tiers get access to the entire catalog of hundreds of episodes of Die Shrinks, and these include exclusive interviews with game devs and other guests, behind the scenes looks at Moore's Law is Dead leaks, and more niche coverage of subjects that really only the biggest gaming dorks like me and you would care about. They would not profit on YouTube, but they don't have to profit on Patreon. And so if you're interested in that, you can get access to all of that stuff and even more at higher tiers, like ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask free questions in Loose Ends live streams ahead of recordings, thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts, and access to the Discord with thousands of fans there who would love to discuss gaming hardware with you. I am one of them. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us, please just share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family and on social media and Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app. All of that stuff does help a ton as well. But as I said, this podcast would not be possible without its patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now is the time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 1024-bit HBM3 or higher supporter levels: Brad Medlin, Z Jits, Daniel D, Nicholas Buckner, Deke, Aaron Close, Jan Router, MJB1, Daniel Hyde, GZ Ziggy, SNES Chalmers, Jem Ferrier, Valcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Sarcastro, Chris Rich, Evan Dingle, Hal Booma, Shredbird, Sammy Molas, Chris Anthenos, Jonathan, Tommy, Jake223, Jake Martin, Amiable Chief, Matthew Cassell, Zlicky, Winwing, I Should, Gamers Unite, Ian Clifford, Meat and Pork, Tim Robb, Travis Gooding, Dan M1988, Zoot Taylor, Mads, Greg, Michael McGee, Stephen Coates, Mark Mitchell, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Cameron, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, Teak Autumn, The Forbidden Juice, Little Germany, Windstar, James I. Raider, Shay, Milton, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Stephen Dick, Mac Daffy, John Swin, Justin Bustle, Austin Haggerty, Joe Foot, Brian Wright, Brian Scanlon, Harlan, Slushbot, Jensen Angima, RB Racer, Bing Bong 3, Solarized 80, Keekum, Sprutnik, Brian P, Cornster 671, Penta Winta, Smash Axley, Omega Doge, Huger, Ender Kiwi, Dominic Passeri, Mr. Tiger, John Wick, Boomstick, Penguins, Love AI, Porcelain Oats, AI Soldier 789, Carrie Mal Masri, Wyhill, Chi Bulls, Manolis, Ragkusis, Kevin Kuntz, Jonathan Harris, Bespoke EP, Kainush, Zyber Ahmed, Johnny Trans, Fred Berger, Hunter Tempeh, Arkeo, RK0, Henry Day, Dudester, John Tiberius, Roadkill Dog, OMG Clover, Rebellious Pilot, Serve, Chilled, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.